You know, up front, I knew, like people said, things are a little more expensive in Iceland. And by little, you think, okay, maybe it's gonna be a few dollars more. It was a lot more than I expected. A lot of people talk about how much like beer and liquor costs, and that really didn't worry me because I'm not a huge drinker anyway, so I wasn't really even concerned about that. But even food, like eating fast food, what you think would be like your really cheap option, like going to KFC. Like I never eat fast food, but I went 3 times while I was here because it was the cheaper option. It was still $16 for a meal at KFC. Like I just ate at Taco Bell just an hour ago, and it was 14 bucks for a like burrito or whatever and a drink. It is a huge difference in price, and the cheapest thing we ate while we were here was hot dogs, and then I just ate a ton of granola and a ton of protein bars that I brought with me, and that was mainly what I ate for most of the time, was just granola and water. One of the first nights in one of my vlogs, me and my friend went to dinner. It was like our first night, like, hey, let's go get something to eat. We went and we both just got 2 entrees and an appetizer, and my friend had a beer. So like kind of a pretty normal American dinner, to be honest. I know it varies from country to country, but in America it's pretty common to you get an appetizer, then you get your 2 entrees, and then you might get a beer or maybe 2 beers. But he had 1 beer, I just had water, and our meal was $108 US, and it was just like a really average meal that we had in a hotel. And that was one thing too. I noticed hotels are way more expensive than anywhere else, so it seems. Big thing, when you're in Iceland, be prepared to spend money. Everything is about money. And I don't mean like, obviously when you travel, you plan to spend money, like you spend money on gas and food. Going to the big waterfalls and the big tourist destinations, every single one of them you had to pay around like $5 to $10 for parking. And then some of them you had to pay the admittance fee to get in as well. Everywhere is going to cost you money. Basically, someone described it really well in my comment section in one of my first vlogs from Iceland. They said, it's like traveling inside of an airport. There's 300,000 people that live in Iceland, a number close to that, and they get 2.5 million tourists a year. 2.5 million tourists a year, that is insane. And because of that, they can get away with ridiculous charging for everything. Fees for getting into parks, fees for food, hotels were very expensive. A very modest hotel that might cost you like 80 bucks back home, $80-$90 was like 180 to 230 bucks. And like a decent size, like maybe a 3-star, 4-star hotel here is like $400 plus. It's insane, but that's just, they can get away with charging it because like what else are you gonna do? And that's why a lot of the nights I slept in my car just because I didn't feel like spending the money on a hotel, and sleeping in a car can be fun sometimes. So I don't know if I've talked about it, but I'm actually single now. I have been for about 3 months. And while we're here, I actually went on a date to downtown Reykjavik with a girl I met from Tinder. Funny enough, it was actually the first time I've ever even met with a girl on Tinder. And I had a lot of fun. It was a really good time. Like the downtown nightlife in Reykjavik is really fun. And it's almost like cheesy fun where, when you go to like a wedding and like they play like really goofy music and everybody's just dancing, having a good time. It was kind of like that. And so it was really fun. And I personally, if you guys know me personally, I don't enjoy really going out. I don't drink that much, but it was a lot of fun. I had 1 beer literally the whole night because I didn't want to spend any money. And we just hopped around from club to club, and it was a lot of fun. We went to a Big Lebowski themed club. The dude, that was just really weird. And they played only like 80s and 90s jams, like everything from like Cher to Rage Against the Machine. It was just really weird, but it was super fun. And everybody seemed to be having a good time, and ran into some Americans and talked to them, and it was fun. Another weird thing, I don't know if this is like a European thing or just an Icelandic thing, or if I'm just naive to the world. Youngins, block your ears, or maybe don't, I don't know. So the girls that I went out with, that I met from Tinder, we're out there and we're like walking between clubs and pull out a can of chewing tobacco. At least that's what I assume it was, chewing tobacco. And there's like 4 girls, and every single one of them like takes a pinch of chewing tobacco, and they're like, oh, do you want some? And I was just like, hell no, I don't know what that is. Like they couldn't explain to me what it is either. They didn't know what the English word for it was. So I was just like, no, I'm good, I'm gonna pass on. And I'm not making this up. Maybe I'm just naive. One of the girls gets the chewing tobacco, puts it on her hand, and just snorts chewing tobacco off of her hand, and just goes like, yeah, like screams. I was like, what the hell is going on right now? Like, this is so freaking weird. But that could just me being culturally ignorant, or that could have just been a weird thing and a weird experience. I don't know, but I thought it was really funny, and I was just like, oh my God. For the most part, everybody was nice, didn't have any problems that night, didn't run into anybody, didn't have any problems. I did with the girls. They went to a gay bar, which I have no problems with, but it was just really funny going in there, and I got hit on by 3 different dudes in a period of like 2 minutes of being in there, so that was just very funny and just a real weird experience. You know, downtown Reykjavik was a lot of fun. It was a good time, but if you want to drink, it's going to be expensive. And luckily for me, I'm really not a drinker anyway, so that played in my favor. But that was definitely a really fun night going downtown. But they do not take it as a joke. Like, I literally did not get home until 8 a.m. that morning. It was just crazy, but it was a ton of fun. I feel like I've talked about a lot of negative things about how much price costs. And I talked about like the fun of going out. Probably my favorite part of the whole entire trip was literally just being in the car, rolling my window down, blaring music and driving through the country and just seeing the huge rolling hills, like giant mountain peaks coming up, looking at the ocean. That was probably my favorite part, was literally just cruising down the road, listening to music, and it was amazing. And then, you know, whenever you'd see something cool, you'd pull over, you'd get out, you'd take a photo of it, I'd film myself, whatever, talk about it. And that was probably one of my favorite parts. And then within that, you sprinkled of all the amazing things, like the big giant waterfalls that you saw. To be honest, it was kind of lost on me, the waterfalls. I had a few that I had like 1 or 2 that I really liked that were very secluded and not very popular waterfalls, but all like the really big popular ones kind of bummed me out, man. There was just hundreds of people there. It was like being at an amusement park. And to be honest, you know, this just comes from me not doing enough research and knowing I didn't realize that there was going to be this many people in Iceland. Like, I knew it was like a popular place, but I didn't know there was going to be thousands of people everywhere you go. It's literally like you're at an amusement park and, you know, you go to a waterfall and you want it to be this like really humbling and spiritual moment where you're seeing this like huge, giant, powerful waterfall like coming down the side of a mountain that starts from glacial freeze off up top of the mountains where it's so cold, there's always snow and stuff like that. And you get there and you walk and you're like, wow, this is cool. And then you look kind of in front of you and there's like, all right, here's 50 people, here's 50 people, here's 100 people in front of the waterfall, and there's just people everywhere. And, you know, in my mind, when I envisioned coming on this trip, I imagined like, you know, hiking up the side of a mountain and coming off, like walking through the road and coming around this hill and seeing this huge waterfall, and it just being like me by myself or me and maybe a few other people. And you walk through it and there's hundreds of people just yelling, screaming, walking around. And, you know, it's a good thing. I'm glad to see other people enjoying the nature and the beauty that's set forth in front of us. But it makes it hard for me to enjoy it sometimes when there's that many people. You know, I'm very much a get off the grid and see what you can find undiscovered type of person. That being said, you know, I had a few really awesome experiences where, you know, one of my vlogs, like I hiked up the side of a mountain and then hiked into a waterfall that there was only 3 other people at, and that was probably one of my favorite days, was getting off the beaten path and going where there wasn't a lot of tourists, and that was really amazing to me. I'm gonna think about like things that I think you must see if you want to come here and things that you could pass on. Things you could pass on, this is just me from a personal experience. The Blue Lagoon, we went there, we didn't even go inside. I just literally filmed and took photos on the outside of it. To be honest, a hot bath or whatever, I know it's geothermal and it's cool, and I've been in a geothermal pool before in Hungary actually, but it didn't really interest me all that much. I'm from Florida, it's always freaking hot. I don't want to see hot stuff, as dumb as that sounds. And when we got there, there was probably a lineup of 300 people waiting to get inside, and it's very expensive to go into the Blue Lagoon as well. And so that was kind of a pass for me. But I know for girls love going there because it's like you get to wear your bathing suit in Iceland, you go into this pool, it's really great for Instagram photos and all that stuff. So not a bad place if you want to go there to get your photo taken, really experience it. But for me, someone who was trying to get away from tourism and all that kind of stuff, that was probably my least favorite place we went to. I mean, all the really big popular waterfalls, they're really beautiful and cool, but there's really only so much that enjoyment that I got out of it, where, you know, I maybe spent 5 to 10 minutes at each one. You know, I wanted it to be this thing where, you know, you sat down for 30 minutes or an hour and just like appreciated the beauty and sat there and took photos. But like I said, it's hard for me to appreciate it. And it's hard to take photos too when there's people everywhere walking around. You can't really get that perfect photo when you have 45 people standing in front of the base of a waterfall. One of the main things people eat over here are lamb, and they eat horses more than beef. At least that's what I was told by the waitress at the restaurant I ate whale at last night. I ate a lot of not a lot, but I ate a few different things while I was here, and I think it's just part of the cultural experience. And coming from America, I know we don't eat horses, but in a lot of European countries they do. And I guess there's nothing wrong with it. Horses are very plentiful, and the waitress, I've never had horse, at least that I'm aware of, I've never had horse, and she said it's very good. They actually prefer the taste of it over beef, and it's cheaper than beef because horses are naturally here, you know, and there's a lot of horse farms. And so what's so funny is I really didn't think about the horse that much. And we were driving around the country, and I'm like driving down the road, and I see all these different pastures and farms that have horses in them everywhere. I'm like, why the hell are all these horses here? And lo and behold, it's because they eat them. Yeah, so it's common to eat horses. They also eat minke whale here as well. The whale was very good. It was like a super tender and salty steak. It was very delicious, and it had a baked potato and like roasted vegetables and a gravy that came with it. That was delicious, one of the best meals. And I was super surprised. I had like geothermal cooked meatballs, and they were freaking killer. It was awesome. There's a lot of great food in Iceland, remember that, but you're gonna have to pay a lot of money for most of it. It's all very expensive, and that's why for most of the trip I ate a lot of granola and protein bars that I brought with me, and would eat just from gas stations. Like I would grab a sub or a sandwich from the gas station that would be like $7. Because if you wanted to go to a restaurant and get an actual meal, it was going to be pretty much a minimum of $15 per person or more, which is pretty crazy. You know, back in the States, you go to McDonald's, you could spend $4 on a meal, if not way less than that. Or you could have 2 people eat for $8. So it's just crazy, the price difference, but that's just because I guess everything has to be really imported here. There's so much tourism, they can get away with charging that much money because it's like, hey, what else are you gonna do? You're here in this country, you gotta eat it. It's just the same concept of being in an airport. You literally don't have any other options, so that's what you gotta do. Gas, like everything's expensive. I think it's just a general statement I need to be making. Gas, very expensive. It cost me like $60 each time to fill up the tank of this tiny little 4-door car I'm driving. I mean, it is a microscopic sized car, and it would cost $60 to fill up the tank every single time. And we drove around the whole entire ring road, so I ended up filling the tank up, I think about, once I filled up today to return to the airport, it'll be the 7th time I filled up the tank. Also, coming from a fishing background, you know, the main goal coming on this trip, it wasn't fishing. You know, I wanted to fish, but it wasn't about fishing. It was more just about traveling and expanding my horizons and seeing new things. But fishing, don't bother coming here if you want to fish, to be honest. Like, unless you are okay with spending an exorbitant amount of money, don't bother coming to Iceland to fish, because they basically have made it, you can't just buy a fishing license, pick up your fly rod or your spinning rod and go fishing, really. You have to have a license, and then every single body of water in Iceland is privately owned or owned by a collective group of people, and they have made permits that you have to buy for every single river if you want to fish it. And the permits are day permits, so it's not like, you know what, I'm here, I'm gonna buy a permit for blah 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 river for the week and I'll be able to fish there all week. No, not how it works. You have to have a permit for that river, for that day, for that time slot in that zone. So meaning, there was a river I was fishing while I was here, and I didn't know I was fishing it illegally. I thought it seemed like public land, but that doesn't exist in Iceland. Public land doesn't really exist. You know, I was in the middle of a town, and there was a river that ran through the middle of town and a waterfall, and I fished in this river like 3 or 4 times just by myself, throwing the fly rod, having fun, caught a few little trout, saw some really big salmon, and we're in this town and this river, and one morning I go there, and there's an older gentleman and a guy probably in his 40s, and they're fly fishing, where I had been fly fishing all week. And so I thought, okay, cool, other people are here. I'm gonna walk down like 300 yards, leave them alone, and kind of get out of their way. And I walk down and I'm running my fly line through my guides, kind of getting ready, and I'm tying up. And the guy comes over and he's like, "Oh, are you on next?" And I was like, basically I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about, dude." Like I was very polite and he was very nice to me, but I just said, like, "I don't know what you're talking about." He's like, "The river's here in Iceland." He's like, "Even though you have a fishing license, you have to have a permit to fish this river today at this time slot in this zone." He's like, "So we have 4 hours here, and then we're gone, and then someone else has 4 hours after us." And he's like, "It's a very exclusive river, and they pay like $200, if not more, just to fish for 4 hours that day." And that's not with a guide, that's not with anything. You only have those 4 hours, you're fishing by yourself, and then there's a limit to the amount of, they say the limit to the amount of rods, meaning the amount of people that can fish that body of water a day or a month. And so the climb to get into fishing in Iceland is extremely expensive, extremely high, and extremely difficult. It's not as easy as like, I got my fly rod with me. Oh, look, here's a river on the side of the road. Let's pull over. Even if it's on the side of the road, believe it or not, it's owned by somebody and you have to have a permit to fish it. And I think literally the only legal fishing I probably did, and I feel bad about it because I really like to follow the confinements of the law when I'm fishing. The only legal fishing I did was probably when I fished on that ocean and I caught a little salmon and I saw some seals, because I can't imagine somebody owns the rights to the ocean. I could be wrong though, I don't know. If you want to fish and you have a ridiculous amount of money and you don't mind paying maybe over $300 a day to fish for 4 hours, come to Iceland. It has some of the best salmon and best trout fishing in the world. And there's a reason for that, because it's pretty freaking hard to fish here if you're not extremely wealthy. And because of that, the fishery is so damn good, but very hard to get access to. Overall, I'd say I enjoyed my trip and I would recommend it to other people. I think it's a beautiful thing. I would not recommend it as like a fishing destination. If you're like, oh man, I really want to catch some big salmon, or I really want to catch some big trout, I wouldn't recommend it. If I had like a company paying for it, if it wasn't out of my own wallet, I would say, yeah, sure, what the heck, go to Iceland. Like if you had a company who were like, all right, we already hired these guides for you, or we already paid for all your permits and we just want you to go and film, I'd be like, hell yeah, dude, like that's awesome. But if it's coming out of your own wallet, don't come to Iceland to fish. If you want to come to sightsee and eat good food and meet people, do it. One last thing I'll hit on before I close this video out. The Icelandic people. Are they nice or are they not? So, keep going back to Tinder for some reason. Funny enough, before I came to Iceland, I was on the Tinderoni back home in Florida, and I matched with some girl, and she was literally originally from Iceland, and she moved to Florida like 5 years ago or whatever. And I asked her, I was just asking her all these questions about, what should I do while I'm there? Like, what are the people like? And I was just joking around. I'm like, what's the best way to meet girls in Iceland? She goes, don't be an American. And basically, they get so many American people and so many tourists that they get really sick of it and just real tired of meeting all the American people. And I get it, as an American, some people can be very abrasive. I always try to be polite, but even I am just like, I'm a professional idiot. I walk around holding a camera. I was literally skateboarding through Reykjavik, like going around people, filming with my camera, and I don't think anything about it, but I'm sure they were probably like, that dude is the biggest douchebag I've ever seen in my life, wearing my backwards hat and my sunglasses, talking to a camera, riding a skateboard. It's hard because there's so many tourists here. The Icelandic people are very standoffish. This is gonna sound terrible. Most of the people I met, if they were very at the hotels or restaurants, if they're very talkative to me, no joke, I had probably 5 different people, if they're really talkative to me and we're getting along, joke around, I would say, you're not from Iceland, are you? And they say, oh no, I'm actually from, Norway, or I'm from Istanbul or whatever. Because if they were very friendly and very outgoing, they really normally weren't Icelandic. And I would ask these people, okay, are the Icelandic people just very cold and very standoffish? They explain it pretty, you gotta look at it from their perspective. They're in their really small, beautiful country that they love, and 2.5 million people come in here a year to visit it. There's probably more people who are not from Iceland here almost every month than there are actually from this country. So they're just sick of it. And she said, the Icelandic people, they are some of the nicest people you'll ever meet in your life once you get to know them. But they are just kind of cold and not very opening at first because, what's the point? There's so many tourists here that, they're in and out of their lives. They don't really care about it. But they said once you get to know them, they're some of the loyal and coolest people that you'll ever get to know in your life. I think that's cool, and I feel bad for them, I didn't realize that tourism was so huge here. I knew there was a beautiful country and people were like, oh, I can't wait to go to Iceland, but I didn't think that there's gonna be hundreds of thousands of other people here. We're driving up in the northwest regions of Iceland where you would think no one's here. There's barely any towns here, and there's still traffic. There's still cars driving everywhere, and you're like, what the hell's going on? Where are these people even coming from? All in all the complaining I did, Iceland was very fun, a very great place. If you guys have any questions about it, or any advice for my next travels, or somewhere I should go next, or any questions about traveling to Iceland, leave them below, let me know. I appreciate the heck of you guys. I know it's a different video, but I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I appreciate the heck of you guys. I am heading home here in a few minutes. See you. Okay. Oh.